Here we are working on the AC. Why do I look bad like this? Because I am hot, sweaty, fat, and out of shape. Anyways, I replaced the compressor on this car. It was locked up, and replaced the air dryer. Two common things, dryers are cheap. Went through all this, got it all done, nothing, no cold AC. Did a couple tests. I have some restriction somewhere in the AC system. Well, because I'm broke down in my knees, it's hard for me to get in and out of vehicles and work on stuff. So something like this, it's easier just to pull the seats. Here you can see the evaporator I've pulled to get to the expansion valve. It basically just slides out if you take all the stuff out from, the blower motor and everything. I've got a video coming up of that later, which will show all that. But this one little part right here, $20 part that took almost 6 hours to replace. Took me about 3.5 or 4 to get everything apart, and it went back together a lot quicker. There's a crossbar here that goes right underneath the glove box that actually broke. All these dash pieces are very brittle. I had that and a couple pieces on the blower motor that snapped, but all in all, the blower motor went back together fine, so I'm assuming it's okay. I'm checking the condition of the evaporator here. I am trying to do this on a budget, and this thing is like $120 or $100, I think. It's kind of crazy. It's kind of crazy how much it is, but went through and it actually cleaned up very nicely. I'm just gonna, shoot with the expansion valve right now, get it replaced, and hope for the best. I guess we'll know tomorrow once I go to get it charged up and see how it does. It's crazy that this is a 92 model and, stuff's still working. I am my coworker is the previous owner of this car, and he is familiar, took care of it. It needed something, he replaced it. And it's kind of cool to have somebody like that to go back and ask questions about what they've done. He had it 14 years. Most times you buy a project car, you don't get that. But here I'm just showing some of the stuff I pulled, the blower motor and the blower motor housing. Of course, I went ahead and pulled the console and everything out. You got to pull the console out to get to the lower part of the dash. Lots of screws, but easy to keep track of. The thing looks a little dirty, but it runs great. Great running car. I went ahead and you can see the cover for the evap and the blower motor housing sitting there. But I went ahead and pulled the heater controls out. There are some cables in there that I had to get to disconnect. They pivot on pieces that are sometimes fragile, and I wanted to get them loose from the heater controls before I started pulling on the other side. I also took the dash cluster out in this. It had a bulb or two that were out. I'm going to go ahead and replace them, while I'm doing all this. It's got a real crappy radio in it that works. Well, works sometimes. I'd really like to replace that, but just not going to spend the money on it yet. I'm still looking at a couple different ones. Do I want to go double din? Do I want to stay single? Do I want to go 1995 on this and put a couple subwoofers in the trunk? I don't know. As I walk around, you'll see stuff like this, broken handles. It's got a bunch of piddly stuff like this that's going on. I've actually got those handles ordered. They were dirt cheap, less than $30 for all 4 of them. They are the brown matching interior too, so I'm kind of excited about finding those. And there's an exterior handle on the driver's door that's also broken. I'd like to go ahead and get it replaced and get all this stuff done, because it's kind of a pain in the butt getting in this thing, having to go through the passenger door. All this stuff is nasty. I'm going to give it all a good scrub down before I put it back in here. But with the seats and stuff removed, it gave me enough room. I could lay on my back and get up underneath the dash. It actually worked really well. And I had planned on this taking a couple days to do this job, and it didn't. It took me 2 nights after work to get it knocked out. I'm fortunate with this being a project, it's not going to be my daily driver, so I can let it sit, and if it takes me a little bit longer than normal to get to it. Crazy how many screws are in that thing. Here you can see that little white circle right there is actually the evaporator. This whole unit, if you undo those two bolts, will slide out towards the passenger side. Now this is with the blower motor and blower motor housing removed. I also had a couple pieces of ductwork I had to remove, and that cover right there goes over the whole thing. But once you get it all unscrewed, it does pop off. Undo the AC lines, it all pops out. Here you can see the cover back installed. You got a couple different screws you need to be sure and get to. Be sure to put them all back in. You know, sometimes it's easy to cut corners putting this stuff back together, but your heat and AC system and defrost system will thank you if you do it correctly. You can see here in this next clip, I've got the blower motor housing put back in there. A couple tabs broke off the top part of that, but there are 2 screws on the side that hold it in, and then a nut right there on the back. With all those put together, it actually is very sound in there, so I don't know what the tab was that broke. You can see here, sorry about the shaky zoom, but you can see I got the blower motor back in, got the white plastic. These 2 screws right here I misplaced. One of my biggest pet peeves is people that replace screws that they've lost and don't use the same kind of fastener. These are Phillips head. Make them all Phillips head. One trick is to put all your parts in bags. You know, every little part I put in bag, labeled it. This is just the part number for the old expansion valve, and here's the part number for the new expansion valve. Wish me luck tomorrow with the charge.